Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to dive into a pretty wild idea. What if the very thing that made us so successful as a species is now threatening to tear everything down? Okay, so let's kick things off with a really big question. When you look at the entire history of humanity, what is our superpower? What's that one thing that let us, Homo sapiens, completely take over the planet? Now, your first guess might be something obvious, right? Like tools or fire or our giant brains. But according to historian Yuval Noah Harari, our real secret weapon is something you can't even touch. It's our incredible and kind of weird ability to tell and believe in shared stories. Okay, so that leads to a really critical question, especially for right now. If our whole world, I'm talking economies, countries, laws, the whole shebang, is built on these shared stories, what happens when we stop believing in them? Well, the answer is as simple as it is terrifying. You change the story. So let's dig into how those massive stories that held our world together are now starting to fray, get rewritten, and, well, in some cases, fall apart completely. All right. First things first, we really need to get our heads around this key idea. How did we, as a species, learn to cooperate in groups of millions when other primates can barely handle a group of 150? The secret, Harari says, is something he calls imagined orders. So what is an imagined order? It's not really a lie. Think of it more like a shared reality that only exists because we all agree it does. It's not something you can find in nature, but it controls almost everything we do. And just think about how deep this goes. These aren't ancient myths. We're talking about the pillars of our modern world. A country? That's a story. A company like, say, Apple or Google, it's what lawyers call a legal fiction. It can own things, you can sue it, but you can't physically touch it. And money, laws, even the concept of human rights, they only work because we all collectively buy into the story. So how did we go from small tribes to, well, this? How did these stories scale up to connect the entire planet into one big interconnected civilization? For thousands of years, there were basically two big unifiers. You had empires, which kind of forced a shared story on people through conquest. But then something even more powerful came along: money. Money became this amazing, universal system of trust that could link up anybody, anywhere, no matter what they believe. And Harari just nails it with this quote: "The shared belief in the value of a piece of metal or a slip of paper did what gods and kings couldn't. It built the first real global network of trust." But this whole story of progress and connection, it has a dark side. The same systems that gave us all this power also made us incredibly fragile. They created these tiny cracks in the foundation of everything we've built. And the first sign of trouble popped up way back, like 12,000 years ago, the agricultural revolution. We always hear about it as this huge leap forward, right? But in a lot of ways, it was a trap. Yeah, the population boomed, but for the average person, it meant working harder and eating worse than their hunter-gatherer ancestors. Turns out, progress wasn't necessarily a win for everyone. Okay, let's jump forward to our time. After the 2008 financial meltdown, the whole story of money got a major rewrite. To keep the system from collapsing, central banks basically created this alternate financial universe that wasn't really connected to the real economy. And the result? Paper wealth shot through the roof, but for a lot of people, wages stayed flat. The story just wasn't adding up for them anymore. And while all that was happening, our big story of endless industrial progress slammed headfirst into a brick wall, the actual physical limits of our planet. We've now blown past the safe limits for a bunch of Earth's critical systems. We're messing with the very stability that allowed our civilization to flourish in the first place. So what happens when all these stories, the political ones, the economic ones, the ecological ones, all start to fall apart at the same time? Well, you get what some people are calling the great unraveling of the 2020s. The old political story of a single, unipolar world with the West in charge, that story is over. It's fractured. We're now living in a world split between two huge rival blocs. Each one has a totally different idea of how things should run, and they're constantly fighting over whose story is the right one. And this isn't just political maneuvering. You have to look at the numbers, the demographics. The BRICS Plus alliance now accounts for almost half of all people on Earth. That's a massive shift in the global center of gravity, pulling it away from the West. And the price tag for all this, it's staggering. Just look at this number, $47 billion. That was Russia's budget deficit for only the first 6 months of 2025. That was supposed to be their deficit for the entire year. It's a perfect example of how this global conflict is just wrecking economies. At the same time, that nice, neat story of stable globalization was just getting ripped to shreds. You had massive economic problems inside giants like China and the US. You had trade wars. You had regional wars escalating and pulling in other powers. It was like a domino effect, with each shockwave dragging the whole interconnected system down with it. Which brings us right back to the beginning. If our world really is built on stories, and all the old ones are breaking, what on earth happens next? See, the mess of the 2020s wasn't just about bad policies or economic downturns. It was deeper than that. It was a crisis of belief, a fundamental loss of faith in those big stories about money and nations and progress that had been the glue holding our world together for centuries. But here's the thing, and this is so important. That superpower of ours, our collective imagination, it's a double-edged sword. Sure, it got us into this mess by creating these fragile systems, but it also means we have the power to imagine our way out. We made up money. We made up nations. We can absolutely make up what comes next. So that's the ultimate question we're left with, isn't it? The future isn't set in stone. It's going to be built on whatever big story we all decide to believe in next. The real challenge for all of us is, can we come up with a new story? One that's stronger, fairer, and actually works with our planet instead of against it?